It's looking good. Ooh, there's some chamomile. I gotta harvest that. I'll be harvesting that pretty soon. In here, trees up in the upper high tunnel. A lot more apples up in there. But anyway, happy Rebels Day for all us Americans. And according to my British friends, happy Treason Day. So, I was listening to Matt Smith and Doug Casey, this morning, and it was interesting. I didn't know how young Matt is and how just a 14-year difference can have painted your picture of the country and history. Because he was a year old. He mentioned he was a year old when we had the bicentennial. Well, that was 1976, so I was 13 coming on 14 since my birthday's in November, right? And I remember it vividly because not only had we been living in Vietnam from 68 to 72, but in those days, when you're an expat, it was a lot different. In the 60s and 70s and 50s, there was a very patriotic attitude of Americans, much more than I've even seen in the 90s and late 80s from the same American school in Singapore, SAS, the Singapore American School that I attended from 72 to 77, that floored me because globalism had totally taken over the education system for American expats, when before it was extremely patriotic. Red, white, and blue. So when we had the bicentennial in Singapore, it's vivid in my mind because I was being set up for the Navy and the Marine Corps at that time into aviation, because the USS Ranger came in. And I was reading up on it because I was trying to remember, was it the Ranger or the Constellation? And so I looked it up, and it was the USS Ranger. And what was so cool about it was not only that the ship came in to help us celebrate the 200th, the bicentennial of the United States, but they actually flew one of the rescue choppers. I think it was a Seahorse, and flew it onto the soccer field at Ulu Pandan Middle School, which is where I was at the time. And we got to go in the chopper and sit in the seats and put the helmets on. It was so cool. That's how they start indoctrinating you, right? And it's very effective. And it just is so vivid in my mind because of the red, white, and blue and all this kind of stuff. And as I look at the 250-year celebration and how it's just a bunch of theatrics, there was real heart. Remember, what had happened? The reason I mentioned it was Captain, was it Christopher Nicholson? I even brought it up. Let me see. Just to confirm. And it's interesting because how he relates to Vietnam also. Because he was in the squadron that Everett Alvarez. And I knew Everett Alvarez because we've both been in a Vietnamese prison. And he was trying to do a new edition of his book. About his experiences as the first U.S. prisoner held in Hanoi, as I recall. Taken in, was it August of 5th of 1964. But Captain Nicholson was the captain of the USS Ranger when it came in. Yeah, no, not Chris. Captain John L. Nicholson. Check him out. Google him. I mean, he died in, was it 2023 or 2024? I think there was the obit in memory. That Gray Eagle one. I posted it on my Substack. 2023, March 15th is when he passed. So, Captain John L. Nicholson. He was the captain of the USS Ranger when it pulled into Singapore for the bicentennial celebration. He was also in the squadron. He stayed flying in the Navy because of his friend and squadron member, Everett Alvarez. He stayed on, I think it was like 5 more tours. And that just shows the character. Again, it goes to the character of the generation of my father's generation. Nicholson, also born in 1930. I've said this before. This generation, the 30, 31, 32, 33, that generation, and 29. Billy Waugh was born in 1929. Extremely patriotic Americans. And if you look at what was actually achieved, when they talk about the successes that we had after World War II, the greatest generation came up with the ideas, but the ones who actually did the dirty work, the ones who actually did the implementation, the ones who dug the ditches, the ones who created the country, the profit and the abundance that was available in this country post World War II, was that generation, the silent generation, with a detour to Korea and then back, and then through the 50s, and especially between 1950 and 1959, when you had the true wealth of the United States being created post what? The Spanish-American War? So think about this with the history of where we are now, where we have become so diluted, and that's what it is. It's a dilution, and it was an active dilution. And as someone who is actually half of an immigrant, the child of an immigrant, I see this, I understand this. Also, someone, as I think back on the history of my family, part of the over mountain boys, over mountain men who fought at Kings Mountain in 1780, in October of 1780, right? David and Andrew Graham, direct relations. Or Edward and Samuel Fuller, who came on the Mayflower. Or the German side that went to Chicago right after the Prussian War, because my great-great-grandfather, who had lost his leg, got an Iron Cross from the Kaiser, from Bismarck, during the unification of Germany and Prussia, swore that he would never have any of his sons lose their leg for the Kaiser. This is the history of people who came to this country to make something bigger and better as compared to what they've been doing for the last 20, 30 years, which is come here, we'll take care of you. So if people are wondering what happened, it's because you just sat back and thought you were doing the right thing and thinking of like, oh, if you just give something to somebody, that's a great thing. And you're really helping them out, as compared to you're actually working on the weakest part of the human psyche, which is if you get something for free. It's that old saying, easy come, easy go. This is where we're at right now. We're actually in the payback for what we've done, which is we let our country go. Remember, you cannot destroy a country from the outside. I've said this for years, because I saw how Vietnam was lost. It was lost from the United States. It wasn't lost by fighting Vietnam. Militarily, we had won every battle in Vietnam. Korea, all these different places. Look at the example of Germany. Does everybody think that Germany actually lost the war until the bankers got in and did what they did? You should really read up on the history of Germany and how Germany, their historians say that Germany actually won the war until the bankers came in and they manipulated things, and then Germany lost. And the same experience right now is that there is a wealth transfer. But see, people aren't getting what the wealth transfer is and what that wealth transfer has been. It is this group. Some of them fade, some of them come in, but there's this constant movement that keeps on coming, keeps on rolling, and everybody else is an expendable. And that's what's happening in this country right now at this very moment, is that they've been diluting the culture because that makes us weaker. We don't have an identity. We don't know what it means to be American anymore. We used to know what being an American meant. You heard the conversation with G. Edward Griffin, individualism, talking about that. What does that really mean? These are very important ideas that are actively being destroyed, have been destroyed. I remember this stuff. Those of you who are the same age as me or older remember what it was like in America when there was individualism. And I don't mean selfish individualism. There's a very big difference. Lost you on that, so we're losing some time on here. So think about what I'm talking about here, where we're having our identity as Americans being lost. And it's important to understand that. And it'll be interesting to see what happens where we just totally dilute and fade away. I mean, how many people have an identity as being Romans anymore? None. None. Do Germans really consider themselves Germans, or they consider themselves global travelers? Their identity was actively destroyed. In the United States, it was by subterfuge, through secrets and through programs that you thought were to help the people. In actuality, they were in order to weaken the people. The education system, the funding systems, the military, how the military has changed, how you're given the Constitution, you're supposed to understand the Constitution, but you don't defend the Constitution. And actually, you go in the military nowadays and you're going totally against the Constitution because you're not defending the United States. You're endangering the United States, especially if you're getting involved in all these different wars in the Middle East, whose objective is only in order to support the globalist bankers. And that's what's happened. It's a redistribution of wealth. And the way you can do that is to create more slaves and to dilute the idea and the identity of the people on which you are about to take everything away and then move it somewhere else. So this is how the wealth is moved. It moved from Rome. Then there was the Dark Ages. And then it went to Holland with the Dutch. And then the Dutch. It moved around. Then we had the Spanish and the French. Then we have England. And then we had a debt. So what is that wealth transfer all about? And how was it that we became a country because of a wealth transfer? So the British Empire was beginning to fail, actually. People say, oh, well, it failed as a result of the American Revolution. It was already on its way out. And two things happened. One is the colonials, we Americans, did a debt default. We were not going to use the British pound, and we were not going to be in debt as a result of using the British pound. Remember, I've talked about it many times, where Benjamin Franklin had gone and told Parliament how we were so successful because we had our own currency. And because we had our own currency, there was just straight money. Real money doesn't have any interest on it. It doesn't have any paying back to a bank. That's why we are screwed until we totally destroy the Federal Reserve. We don't need the Federal Reserve to have money. And what's going to be worse is they're going to push it to the next level, which is they're going to try and do the digital banking. My hope is that the technology will collapse, and I think it's going to collapse. I think it's going to just totally collapse in a manner that most people are not prepared for. And if you want to talk about the Terminator Doomsday operation that's going on that Peter Thiel is getting ready for, I would say it's because he gets it too, and he understands what happened in 2000. I understood what happened in 2000, which is we didn't bring the goods. And as a result, everybody got screwed financially. Same thing's going to happen this time with AI. But the problem is, they're going to have so many services being provided, or is going to be reliant, getting ready to go on to the next stage of AI support, that when that switch is flipped and the AI doesn't come with the goods, lights out. And why is this? You don't have to start a war. You don't have to cause a pandemic. You don't even have to do a plandemic, which is a pandemic that is really has nothing to do with disease. It's just the interpretation that you think there's something really dangerous. And in reality, it just causes you to do things that kill you anyway, like getting intubated in a hospital, not using ivermectin for something that would totally disappear if you did. All these kinds of things. Remember, Interpreted fear is just as bad as a real fear. And if you want to kill a lot of people, you get them relying on a technology that doesn't work. Because power works right now. Even though our grid is failing, it's still working. That's why I try to get across to these people who go, "Ooh, I'm going off grid." I go, "You're not going off grid. Every one of them has automatically got some solar panel, got some wind, got some water." And they say, "Oh, we're off grid." You're not off grid. You're still on a grid. You just own the grid. But think about it. You're going to provide the infrastructure and support for a private and small off a grid, your grid, and you're relying on the production of products and services that will continue to deliver the goods that you'll need to repair and improve your private personal grid. Think about that. Who do you think is going to get the first dibs on whatever is being produced? It's not going to be the private citizen. It's going to be whoever is the big corporation is going to get their hands on it, and then they're going to try and sell it at a high price. So real off-grid, if you want to start thinking real off-grid, start thinking like your great-grandparents who had candles and kerosene lamps. That's what we have here for off-grid. Until then, I'm using the grid as much as I can to get things totally fabricated exactly the way I want. Just like using an excavator to do land moving and modification and replanting trees where they'll do better in that location than they did in a prior location. You can do that while you still got the kit, while you still got the gear. But if it breaks and then you're going to try and repair it while production is no longer coming about, and we're already seeing that. We've been seeing that. You're seeing the failing of the production system for two reasons. You don't have the customers creating the demand for the producer. You have the producer not being able to find people to work for him, and people who are willing to take the pay, which is not coming close for them to even survive. You're seeing the actual collapse happening in front of your eyes. And if you're preparing, and you have been prepared, and you saw it coming when it started coming in, like in 2008, 2007, then you're good. And if you're not, you got to hurry up. There's still chances. There's still hope. You can still fight a battle. Think about it. The United States was losing World War II. And then suddenly it won. How did that happen? Is it a belief of a people over the belief of another people? I don't know. But look at what's happening in this country right now. It's not an accident. It's not an accident that you see such. You've had so many people running out of here. Because basically they're carpetbaggers. The majority of people who've come to this country now are just here to take. And compare that with the people who came here and made the country. These are the people on the Mayflower who are looking for religious freedom. These are people like on my Scots-Irish side who are looking to be able to not be freaking murdered all the time or starved to death by the English. Think about that. They came here because there was a bounty, there was abundance, and all you had to do was put sweat equity and knowledge, and you could actually have abundance, and you could provide for yourself. That's where the individuality came from. It actually came from the Scots-Irish, because the Scots and Scots-Irish are some of the most individualistic people. But when a fight comes, we unite together against a common enemy. The problem right now is there's been so much dilution within societies by design. And think about the ones who have become the most powerful and the most rich. What is it they are constantly pushing? No intermarrying with anybody outside of the culture. No interaction outside of the culture. I mean, I thought the Russian old believers were bad. But when you see the traditional Zionists and the manner in which they work, it is frickin' wild. It's totally changed. When I was younger, I've been invited to Seder. I've done Seder. I know what it is. I've done these ceremonies. I've done these experiences. Can you imagine me being invited to it now? No, because it's so polarized. It's so shifted. Again, as the pendulum swings and as things are getting tough and tight, It's that thing about who are your friends? Who are your allies? You don't find your allies when it's, hey, let's go out for a drink and let's have some fun or grab some coffee, when it's all casual and there's nothing at risk. You find your friends, your allies, when it's hitting the fan or it's about to hit the fan, and you find out who runs. These are all the draft dodgers I remember when I was a little kid. Didn't go to Vietnam. They came back from college or Canada when Carter let them come back. And the interesting thing is, then there was this big boom in the 80s, like right when I got back from Vietnam. And all these guys were watching these Vietnam movies who'd never gone to Vietnam. And then suddenly they were saying, going to people that are their own age and saying, welcome home. And I'm sorry I didn't go with you. Think about that. You have an example of the guys that didn't go to Vietnam and they ran to Canada. Those aren't the people you want in your team. You want the people who were there when it was bad. And for those who went to Vietnam, it was bad. For those of us who went to Central America, it was bad. For those who went to the GWAT, it was bad. And I think all of them are fucking bullshit because they're all bankers' wars. But that's not the key. The key is an understanding of service. And that's the thing with Trump. Trump didn't go either. He was a draft dodger. He's clearly a draft dodger. And then what blows me away is how the military and people who are in the military are excusing that. But now you're seeing the real color of who he is when things get tight and things get bad. And he has no class either. That's the whole, you look at what's happening in this country. There's no class in this country. This is the idea that you have civility. Remember, I've said this over and over again. Civility is the base word. Civil is the base word of civilization. When you have no civility, you have no civilization. Civility is what gets us and enables us to interact with each other, even if we freaking hate the guts of the other person. But we know that we have to rely on each other to get through this dilemma. Well, we don't have civility. We have people who are freaking ready to eat their own children. Think about that. This is the 250th anniversary. This is the celebration of the birth of this country. And it is the saddest, most demoralizing event that I've seen. And you know what? Partly is because I'm seeing all these celebrations that remind me of Rome during the fall, when more and more, as they realized, as the Senate and the politicians realized that everything was going to screw the pooch real soon, they started getting all these fiestas going, all these celebrations of grandeur. This is how you know the frickin' show is about to end, is because the big lights are going to start going off. Everything is going to be running all over the place, and people are going to be jumping up in joy, and then the meteor just hits. That's what I'm looking at. But I'm fine. I'm relaxed. I'm in my happy place. I got my apples. I got my maple tree that's going to go out, and another 4 or 5 years, it'll be maple syrup. And then some pears in the back. I'm going to get some peaches in here, too. See, you got to create your own world to have your base and your own security. I hope you're doing the same. But I'm also hoping that you're looking at how the world is treating you. And what part you can do to make it a better place by your interactions with other people. How do you treat other people? Even if they're fucking assholes. And if there's an opportunity to give a lesson. So when there was an opportunity for them to go off and kill a bunch of Tories at Kings Mountain, they did. And if you know the history, they are yelling and screaming, remember Waxhaws. See, revenge is actually a very powerful thing, but think about it. If you have to rely on revenge to actually make a change in your country for the better, then it's kind of like you've got your back against the wall. And see, that's the thing about it. I'm realizing, well, you know what? People do have to wait. Some people just don't get it. They don't want to get it. You don't want to see the reality of what's happening. You'd rather be distracted with the pretty pictures and the pretty lights. The people who put Trump in place, they know this. The people who put Biden in before, they know this. We have not had a real president in this country since, Abraham Lincoln. And look what they did to him. And we almost got one with Kennedy, and look what they did to him. And we almost got one with Reagan, and look what they did to him. Damn. On that note, God bless America. I'm red, white, and blue. I hope you are too. Watch your six.